So in this lesson here, we're going to be wrapping up our chapter. So we've talked about three different equations in this chapter. So we started off with our slope intercept, which tells us our m is our slope and our b is our y-intercept. We talked about slope point form, which was our m is still our slope, and then y1 and x1 were any point. Okay, and the last one we did was general form. Now remember, general form doesn't actually tell us anything helpful. So if we're given general form and we have to find information, usually what we do is we convert it into slope-intercept form. And then if we're asked to write an equation in general form, like the first example that we're going to do, we have to first write it in either slope y-intercept or slope point form, and then convert it to our general form. Okay, so that's what this little section is all about. We just have a few examples to go through. So the first one, given 0.7, -4, and -1, 4, determine the equation in general form of a line passing through 2 points. So once again, it wants it in general form, but we can't do that right off the bat. We either have to do slope intercept or slope point form. Either one, we need to find a slope. Now, nothing in this question tells me what the slope is. So what we're going to do is we have to calculate it, which is fine. So I have 2 points. And we can use our slope equation, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember, when we use this equation, we need to first designate one point as 0.1 and one as 0.2. It doesn't matter which is which. I'm just going to go 1 and 2. And then we're going to very carefully fill in this equation. So our y at 0.2 is 4 minus our y at 0.1 is -4. And then on the bottom of our fraction, we're going to have x2 minus x1. So our x at 0.2 is -1 minus our x at 0.1 is 7. Okay, solve the top and the bottom separately and then simplify your fraction if you can. So 4 minus -4 is 8. Over -1 minus 7 is -8. Okay, and then 8 divided by -8, that should just be -1. So we have our slope. Now we have to figure out if we're going to be doing slope y-intercept or slope point form. For slope y-intercept, we need the y-intercept. Now, nothing here tells me that there's nothing here indicating there's a y-intercept. And if it was a point, remember your y-intercept, the x is 0. Okay, neither of these points have their x as 0. So I don't have the y-intercept. So I'm going to have to do slope point form. So I'm just going to write our equation down. It's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We're just going to fill it in. So for this one, we need to pick a point. Doesn't matter which one we pick. I'm just going to pick the first one because why not? And we're going to fill it in, okay? Y and x need to stay as y and x. So I'm going to have y minus, and this is where we're going to put our coordinates. So y minus y1, that'll be our y coordinate. So our y coordinate is -4. So careful, this would be y minus -4. And it's going to be equal to m. We said our m was -1 times x minus x1. So we'll have x minus our x coordinate. Our x coordinate is 7. Okay. From here, now we can write it into general form. Okay. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Because if you notice a few things, first off, I see brackets. General form doesn't have brackets. So let's clean this up. First off, y minus -4. Remember, two negatives make a positive. So y minus -4 is the same as y plus 4. And then on the right, if you remember to get rid of our brackets, we're going to have to multiply the number in front inside our brackets. So -1 times x is -1x. -1 times -7 is +8. Now, there's pretty much 3 conditions we need to meet for general form. Number 1 is all our terms need to be on one side. So we're going to have to move either the terms on the left to the right side or the terms that are on the right to the left side. Okay, number 2, we don't want any fractions, which is fine. I don't have any fractions. Okay, and then the third condition, this is the one that everyone forgets, is your x term needs to be positive. Okay, right now it's negative. It's a negative 1x. So to make it positive, the easiest thing to do is if it's positive, keep it there and move everything to the same side as x. If it's negative, then move it to the other side along with whatever's with it. So here, if I have negative 1x, to get rid of it, I would have to add 1x, and that's where that plus 1x comes from. And then we also have to move that 8. So this is plus 8, so we're going to have to go minus 8 then to move it over. And then lastly, we just need to write things in the right order. So it goes x term, y term, and then our constant. Our x term is 1x. Our y term is just positive y, so plus y. And then our constant, we've got 4 minus 8. So that would be negative 4. And then on the right, I got rid of everything, so I can just set the whole thing equal to 0. Okay, x is positive, no fractions. Everything's on one side equal to 0. That's our general form. Let's look at example 2. This one says determine the equation in general form of a line passing through the point 5, 0 and perpendicular to the line with equation 3x minus 5y plus 17. Okay, again, I cannot jump straight into writing it in general form. Okay, we have to either do slope point or slope y-intercept. Okay, now we can kind of break it down a little bit into our clues. So our first clue is that it is passing through the point 5, 0. Now I want you to think about, is this our y-intercept or not? If you're not sure, do a quick little sketch. Okay. 5 and 0 means my x is 5, so I'm going over 5, and my y is 0. Is that a y-intercept? It's not a y-intercept. That's an x-intercept. So I have a point, but it is not the y-intercept. So I'm going to have to be using my slope point form. Okay. Our other clue, here's our other clue. It is perpendicular to this line. What do we know about perpendicular lines? Their slopes are opposite sign reciprocals. So we need to figure out the slope of this equation. Okay. Now remember, general form tells us nothing. So we need to change it into our slope y-intercept form then. So I'm going to take my equation, 3x minus 5y plus 17, okay, equals 0. Remember for slope point form, all we have to do is get y all by itself. So I'm going to move y to the other side. So here I've got minus 5y, so I'm going to go ahead and add 5y to get rid of it, which is going to move it over here. Because what we do to one side, we do the other. And let's see what we're left with. We're left with the 3x plus 17. And then on the right side, we got 0 plus 5y. Well, that's just 5y. Last thing we need to get y by itself is we got to get rid of that 5. Remember, to get rid of a coefficient, you just divide by it. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop there for a second. So that means to get y by itself, we're going to have to divide by 5, which will cancel. And then we're going to have to divide the other side of our equation by 5 as well. So that just means that each term needs to be divided by 5. If it doesn't divide nicely, just leave it as a fraction, okay? 3 divided by 5 is not nice. So we're going to leave it as 3 over 5x, okay? 17 divided by 5 doesn't work nicely. So we're just going to leave it as 17 over 5, okay? And that's now equal to our y. So let's go back to our clue. It says that it's perpendicular to this line. So remember, perpendicular means the slope is going to be the opposite sign reciprocal. So what's our slope in this question? Here's our slope. So if it's going to be perpendicular, that means that our slope is going to be the opposite. It'll be reciprocal. So instead of 3 over 5, it's going to be 5 over 3. Okay, 3 over 5 is a positive fraction, so this needs to be the opposite sign. This needs to be negative 5 over 3. So we now have our slope. Once again, I do not have the y-intercept. I'm given just a point. It's the x-intercept. So I'm going to have to use it in my slope point form then. So I'm going to start with my equation. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, always start off with your empty equation. And we're going to fill it in. So we'll have y minus my y coordinate. So here's my 0.50. The y coordinate is 0 equal to m, my slope we said was -5/3. And then in brackets, we have x minus my x coordinate. So we'll have x minus 5. Okay, let's tidy this up a bit. So on the left, y minus 0. Does subtracting 0 actually do anything? It doesn't do anything. So we can just write it as y then, right? And then remember, general form, we don't want brackets. So we're going to have to multiply this -5/3 in the brackets. So -5/3 times x is just -5/3x. -5/3 times -5. Please remember when you multiply a fraction and an integer, you only multiply the numerator by that integer. Okay? If you forget, again, you're welcome to put it over 1 and then multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together, right? -5 times -5 is +25. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, general form. We don't want any fractions. So remember, to get rid of your fractions, you need to multiply by the common denominator. If there's only one denominator, which here there is, it's just 3, just multiply by the denominator. So remember, every single term needs to be multiplied by this denominator. So we're going to have to go y times 3 is 3y. Please remember as well, when you multiply a fraction by its denominator, it just cancels out the denominator. So if I go -5/3 times 3, it's just -5. Don't forget the x. Plus, if I go 25/3 times 3, it's just 25. Okay? If you want to do this multiplying the long way, you can, but this is the quickest way. We want to move everything to one side so that our x term is positive. Right now, my x term is negative. So to make it positive, we're going to move it over. So to move it over, we're going to have to add 5x. That's where my plus 5x comes from. And then we're also going to have to move the 25 over. So right now it's plus 25. We're going to have to go minus 25. Last step, just write everything in the right order. X term, y term, constant. Our x term is 5x. Our y term is positive 3y. And our constant is minus 25. And it's all equal to 0 now. Okay, we've answered the question now. All right, let's try one last example. Once again, it wants the answer in general form. So either we're plugging it into slope y-intercept or slope point form first. Look at your clues. Our first clue, it is perpendicular to this line. Hey, we just did that. Okay, remember, for it to be perpendicular, we have to figure out the slope, and it is going to be the opposite sign reciprocal. Okay, let's go ahead and tackle that first. Why not? So take your equation. I'm just going to leave it here because I don't really have to do anything with it. We want to get y by itself. So to get rid of this y or get it by itself, right now it's minus 7y. We're going to want to add 7y to both sides, right? And let's see what we have left over. I've got my 5x minus 10 still. And on the right, 0 plus 7y is just going to be 7y. Okay, and then remember, to get y by itself, this is 7y. To get rid of a coefficient, you have to divide by it. So we're going to divide by 7 on both sides. Okay, if it doesn't divide into a nice integer, leave it as a fraction. So 5/7, 5 divided by 7 doesn't divide. So we'll leave it as 5/7x. 10/7 doesn't divide nicely, so we'll leave it as minus 10/7. Okay, now y is by itself, and we'll take a look at our slope, because again, it's supposed to be perpendicular. So which number is our slope? This in front of x is our slope. So for it to be perpendicular, it's going to be the opposite sign reciprocal. So our reciprocal, 5/7, is now 7/5. Our fraction was positive, so now it's going to be negative. So our slope is going to be negative 7/5. Let's look at our next clue. It says it has the same y-intercept as this equation. Okay, we need to find our y-intercept. So, dang. So to figure out our y-intercept, we're going to want to put this into our slope y-intercept form and then just look what the y-intercept is. Okay, so our slope y-intercept form, we need to get y by itself. So I'm going to get this 2y by itself. Right now it's minus 2y, so we're going to go ahead and add 2y, and we'll do the same thing over here. And let's see what we have left over. On the left, we have our x minus 12, and it's going to be equal to 0 plus 2y is just 2y. Lastly, once again, to get your y by itself, to get rid of the coefficient, you gotta divide by it. So we're gonna divide by 2 and divide by 2 over here. Okay, don't worry too much about this x over 2 because we don't actually care about the slope. We care about the y-intercept. So here we'll have x over 2 minus, what's 12 divided by 2? We get 6. And it's equal to y. Careful with this part. What's our y-intercept? Our y-intercept is -6. Make sure you take the sign with it, okay? So that means our m, sorry, not our m, our b value is -6. And then our final step is to put it into, we have slope, we have y-intercept, put it into slope y-intercept form, and then convert it into general. So our slope y-intercept form, we're going y equals mx plus b. Okay, plug in what we got. We got y is equal to, our m we said was -7 over 5. X plus b, it's -6, so I'm going to go -6. Okay, last step, put it in general form. So number 1, let's get rid of our fractions. So we're going to have to multiply this thing by the denominator. So our denominator is 5. We're going to multiply everything by 5. Y times 5 is 5y. -7 over 5 times 5 cancels out the denominator. It's just -7, so -7x. And then -6 times 5 would be -30. Okay, finally move everything to one side so that your x is positive. So far my x is negative, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over then. So this is -7x, so we're going to add 7x, add 7x over here, and then also move over that 30. So -30 is now going to be +30. And then just write it in the proper order. X term, Y term, constant. Our X is 7X. Our Y is positive 5Y. Our constant is +30. And it's all equal to 0 because there's nothing left over there. Okay. So that was, I believe that's the last example here. There's a bunch of practice questions to help get through this. After that, we are done this chapter, so there's also a bunch of attached review as well.